What's up, suckers? I'm back, and I'm here to talk about more 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. So today we're going to go over ability scores and what they mean. We talked about the races, we talked about the classes, and I would mention, certain classes would give you certain numbers or certain buffs, and to somebody who's never played D&D, they don't know what that shit means. So here we go. So all your characters that we went over, they're made up of 6 different abilities. These 6 abilities are kind of their aptitude at doing different things. They have strength, which measures physical power, dexterity, which measures agility, constitution, which measures endurance, intelligence, which measures reasoning and memory, wisdom, which measures perception and insight, charisma, which measures force of personality. So we'll read a little bit of the flavor. Is a character muscle-bound and insightful, brilliant and charming, nimble and hardy? Ability scores define these qualities, a creature's assets as well as weaknesses. The 3 main roles of the game, the ability check, the saving throw, and the attack roll, rely on the 6 ability scores. The book's introduction describes the basic rules behind these rolls. Roll a d20, add an ability modifier derived from one of 6 scores, and compare the total to a target number. This chapter focuses on how to use ability scores and saving throws, covering the fundamental activities that creatures attempt in the game. Rules for attack rolls appear in Chapter 9. So, ability scores and modifiers. Each of a creature's abilities has a score, a number that defines the magnitude of that ability. An ability score is not just a measure of innate capabilities, but also encompasses a creature's training and competence in activities related to that ability. A score of 10 or 11 is the normal human average, but adventurers and many monsters are a cut above in most abilities. A score of 18 is the highest that a person usually reaches. Adventurers can have scores as high as 20, and monsters and divine beings can have scores as high as 30. Each ability also has a modifier derived from the score, and ranging from -5 for an ability score of 1 to +10 for an ability score of 30. The ability scores and modifiers tables notes the ability modifiers for the range of possible ability scores. Pretty much to find an ability score, what you do is you will subtract 10 from whatever a number is, and then you'll divide the remainder by 2, and then you will round down. So case in point, if you have a strength of 12, we're going to subtract 10, so now you have 2. You divide that by 2, and you're going to have an ability modifier of 1. So because you have the 1 left over. So for instance, if you had a strength of say 18, we would subtract 10. Then we would divide the remainder, which is 8, by 2, which would leave us 4. So you would then have an ability modifier of +4. It actually says it in the next part. To determine an ability modifier without consulting the table, subtract 10 from the ability score and then divide the total by 2, round down. Because ability modifiers affect almost every attack roll, ability check, and saving throw, ability modifiers come in play more often than their associated scores. Advantage and disadvantage. Sometimes a special ability or spell tells you that you have advantage or disadvantage on an ability check, a saving throw, or an attack roll. When that happens, you roll a second d20. When you make the roll, use the higher of the 2 rolls if you have advantage. Use the lower of the rolls if you have disadvantage. For example, if you have disadvantage in a roll of 17 and a 5, you use the 5. If instead you have advantage and roll those numbers, you use the 17. In multiple situations, if multiple situations affect a roll and each one grants advantage or imposes disadvantage on it, you don't roll more than 1 additional d20. If 2 favorable situations grant advantage, for example, you still only roll 1 additional d20. If circumstances causes a roll to have both advantage and disadvantage, you are considered to have neither of them, and you roll 1 d20. This is true even if multiple circumstances impose disadvantage and only one grants advantage or vice versa. In a situation, you have neither advantage nor disadvantage. When you have advantage or disadvantage in something in the game, such as the Halfling's Lucky Trait lets you re-roll the d20, you can re-roll only one of the dice. You choose which one. For example, if a Halfling has advantage on an ability check and rolls a 1 and a 13, the Halfling could use the Lucky Trait to re-roll the 1. You usually gain advantage or disadvantage through the use of special abilities, actions, or spells. Inspiration, see Chapter 4, can also give a character advantage on checks related to the character's personality, ideals, or bonds. The DM can also decide the circumstances if that circumstances influence a roll in one direction or the other, and grants advantage or imposing disadvantage as a result. Proficiency bonus. Characters have a proficiency bonus determined by level, as detailed in Chapter 1. Monsters also have this bonus, which is incorporated in their stat blocks. The bonus is used in the rules on ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls. Your proficiency bonus can be added to a single die roll or other number more than once. For example, if 2 different rules say you can add your proficiency bonus to a wisdom saving throw, you nevertheless add the bonus only once when you make the save. Occasionally, your proficiency bonus might be multiplied or divided, doubled or halved, for example, before you apply it. For example, the Rogue's Expertise feature doubles the proficiency bonus for certain ability checks. If a circumstance suggests that your proficiency bonus applies more than once to the same roll, you still add it only once and multiply or divide it only once. By the same token, if a feature or effect allows you to multiply your proficiency bonus when making an ability check that wouldn't normally benefit from your proficiency bonus, you still don't add the bonus to the check. So let me read that again. By the same token, if a feature or effect allows you to multiply your proficiency bonus when making an ability check that wouldn't normally benefit from your proficiency bonus, you still don't add the bonus to the check. For that check, your proficiency bonus is 0. Given the fact that multiplying 0 by any number is still 0. For instance, if you lack proficiency in the history skill, you gain no benefit from a feature that lets you double your proficiency bonus when you make intelligence checks. In general, you don't multiply your proficiency bonus for attack rolls or saving throws. If a feature or effect shows you allows you to do so, the same rules apply. Ability checks. An ability check tests a character or monster's innate talent and training in effort to overcome a challenge. The DM calls for an ability check when a character or monster attempts an action other than an attack that has a chance of failure. When the outcome is uncertain, the dice determine the results. For every ability check, the DM decides which of the 6 abilities is relevant to the task at hand and the difficulty of the task, represented by a difficulty class. The more difficult the class, the higher its DC. The typical difficulty classes table shows the most common DCs. So very easy will be like 5, easy's 10, they go up by 10, where ultimately nearly impossible is 30. To make an ability check, you roll a d20 and add the relevant ability modifier. As with other d20 rolls, apply bonuses and penalties and compare the total to the DC. If the total equals or exceeds the DC, the ability check is a success. The creature overcomes a challenge at hand. Otherwise, its feature, which means the creature or monster, otherwise is a failure, which means the creature or monster makes no progress towards the objective or makes progress combined with a setback determined by the DM. Contests. Sometimes one character's or monster's efforts are directly opposed to another's. This can occur when both of them are trying to do the same thing and only one can succeed. Such as an attempt to snatch up a magic ring that has fallen to the floor. This situation also applies when one of them is trying to prevent the other from accomplishing a goal. For example, when a monster tries to force a door open that an adventurer is holding closed in situations like these, the outcome is determined by a special form of ability check called a contest. Both participants in a contest make ability checks appropriate to their efforts. They apply all appropriate bonuses and penalties, but instead of comparing the total to a DC, they compare the totals to their checks. The participants with the higher check total wins the contest. That character or monster either succeeds at the action or prevents the other from succeeding. If the contest results in a tie, the situation The situation remains the same as it was before the contest. Thus, one contestant might win the contest by default. If two characters tie in a contest to snatch a ring off the floor, neither character grabs it. In a contest between a monster trying to open a door and an adventurer trying to keep the door closed, a tie means the door remains shut. Skills. Each ability covers a broad range of capabilities, including skills that a character or a monster can be proficient in. A skill represents a special aspect of an ability score, and an individual's proficiency in a skill demonstrates a focus of that aspect. A character's starting skill proficiencies are determined at character creation, and a monster's skill proficiency appears in the monster's stat block. For example, dexterity checks might reflect a character's attempt to pull off an acrobatic stunt, to palm an object, or to stay hidden. Each of these aspects of dexterity has an associated skill: acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth, respectively. So a character who has proficiency in stealth skill is particularly good at dexterity checks related to sneaking and hiding. The skills related to each ability score are shown in the following list. No skills are related to Constitution. See an ability's description in later sections of the chapter, for example, of how to use the skill associated with an ability. All right, so strength determines athletics, dexterity, acrobatics, sleight of hand, stealth, intelligence, arcana, history, investigation, nature and religion, wisdom, animal handling, insight, medicine, perception, survival, charisma, deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion. Sometimes the DM might ask for an ability check using a specific skill. For example, make a wisdom perception check. At other times, the player might ask the DM if proficiency in a particular skill applies to a check. In either case, proficiency in a skill means an individual can add his or her proficiency bonus to the ability checks that involve that skill. Without proficiency in the skill, the individual makes a normal ability check. For example, if a character attempts to climb up a dangerous cliff, the Dungeon Master might ask for a strength athletics check. If the character is proficient in athletics, the character's proficiency bonus is added to the strength check. If the character lacks a proficiency, he or she just makes a strength check. Variant skills. Let me see something. How much longer does this chapter in particular go? I'll read another page, and then I'll stop and finish it out tomorrow. Variant skills with different abilities. Normally, your proficiency in a skill applies only to a specific kind of ability check. Proficiency in athletics, for example. Where was I? Sorry, I am trying to clear my throat. Proficiency in athletics, for example, usually applies to strength checks. In some situations, though, your proficiency might be reasonably applied to a different kind of check. In such cases, the DM might ask for a check using an unusual combination of ability and skill. Or you might ask your DM if you can apply a proficiency to a different check. DM, if you can apply a proficiency to a different check. Why did I reread that sentence? I can't read for a second. For example, if you have to swim for an offshore island on the mainland, your DM might call for a Constitution check to see if you have the stamina to make it that far. In this case, your DM might allow you to apply your proficiency in athletics and ask for a Constitution athletics check. So if you're proficient in athletics, you apply your proficiency bonus to the Constitution check, just as you would normally do for a strength check. Similarly, when your half-orc barbarian uses a display of raw strength to intimidate an enemy, your DM might ask for a strength intimidation check, even though intimidation is normally associated with charisma. Passive checks. A passive check is a special kind of ability that doesn't involve any die rolls. Such a check can represent the average result for a task done repeatedly, such as searching for secret doors over and over, or can be used when the DM wants to secretly determine whether the characters succeed at something without rolling dice, such as noticing a hidden monster. Here's how to determine a character's total roll for a passive check. 10 plus all modifiers that normally apply to the check. If the character has advantage on the check, add 5 for disadvantage. Subtract If the character has advantage for the check, add 5. For disadvantage, subtract 5. The game refers to a passive check total as a score. For example, if a first level character has a wisdom of 15 and a proficiency in perception, he or she has a passive wisdom score of 14. The rules on hiding in the dexterity section below rely on passive checks, as do the exploration in Chapter 8. Working together. Sometimes 2 or more characters can team up to attempt a task. The characters who's leading the effort or the one with the highest ability modifier can make an ability check with advantage, reflecting the help provided by the other characters in combat. This requires the help action. A character can only provide help if the task is one that he or she could attempt alone. For example, trying to open a lock requires proficiency with thieves' tools. So a character who lacks that proficiency can't help another character in that task. Moreover, a character can help only when 2 or more individuals working together would actually be productive. Some tasks, such as threading a needle, are no easier with help. Group checks. When a number of individuals are trying to accomplish something as a group, the DM might ask for an ability check. In such a situation, the characters who are skilled at a particular task help cover those who aren't. To make a group ability check, everyone in the group makes the ability check. If at least half the group succeeds, the whole group succeeds. Otherwise, the group fails. Group checks don't come up very often. They're more useful when all the characters succeed or fail as a group. For example, when the adventurers are navigating a swamp, the DM might call for a group wisdom survival check to see if the characters can avoid the quicksand, sinkholes, and other natural hazards of the environment. If at least half of the group succeeds, the successful characters are able to guide their companions out of danger. Otherwise, the group stumbles into one of these hazards. Using abilities. We're going to stop right there so I can leave this to read tomorrow and where it breaks. And it's going to break down all 6 ability scores. And we're going to do saving throws. And we're going to know how to use all the ability checks and everything. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys helping me learn this system. Peace.